Oculus by Eerily. Prologue. Okay, Craig muttered. He laid back in Tweak's bed and got comfortable. However, the little blonde shuddering beside him was too uneasy with his bedroom to pay attention to his friend. "What is it you needed me here for?" Craig asked. Tweak said it was urgent. There was something odd about his new house, though he wouldn't say what. Tweak's eyes shifted to the ceiling before he replied in a whisper. "There's a man who lives in the attic." "A man?" Craig asked with squinted eyes. It was hard to see Tweak in the dim light of the room. "Yeah, a ghost, I think. At least, I hope." Tweak scraped at his scalp with his fingernails. "Oh God, a ghost would be so less scary than an actual man. I want you to see him too, so my mom would believe me. She never believes me." Craig wasn't alarmed. So many odd things came out of Tweak's mouth over the years. Ghosts seemed tame in comparison to most of his conspiracy theories. Tweak could sense his friend's disbelief. He grabbed him by the front of his pajama shirt and whispered urgently, "It's true. If I lay in bed and listen really quiet, I can hear the ceiling creak under his feet." They laid in silence, as if the eerie groaning of hardwood would fill the space between them. However, much to both of their relief, the sound never comes. "Ghosts aren't real, you know," Greg said, as if he wasn't leery himself. "They are too," Tweak persisted. "I've seen lots of them, and this one, he stands by my bed and talks to me while I try to sleep." "Maybe you just dreamt it?" "Sometimes it's hard to tell them apart. Reality and dreams, I mean," Craig clarified. Tweak was silent for a short while as he contemplated his friend's point. Maybe they were only nightmares or even figments of his imagination. It wouldn't have been the first time he believed in something that wasn't true. But the man was so real. He could still recall the first night he heard knocking at the attic door. Craig frowned, though Tweak couldn't see it. He leaned forward and slipped an arm around his frightened friend to nestle close. "It's okay," Craig assured him. "Tonight we'll figure this out." Tweak didn't say anything back. He just lay there with his forehead pressed into Craig's collarbone. He was trying to be brave, but he wasn't so strong at only 11 years old. As time crept on, though, he let himself slip into a sense of comfort. All talk of ghosts and spirits left their mind as conversation veered towards school and the people they knew there. "You like Wendy and you know it," Tweak teased. "She's such a know-it-all, though." "Craig and Wendy sitting in a tree. Don't you even say that stupid rhyme to me, I swear to God." Kissing. Craig playfully clamped his hand on Tweak's mouth. Much to Craig's displeasure, Tweak knew how to get out of it without so much as lifting a finger. "Ew," Craig shouted before wiping his hand on Tweak's arm. "You didn't have to go and lick me, you weirdo." Tweak giggled and held his stomach as he laughed. The laughter stopped when a noise interrupted their coziness. It was fuzzy and loud like static. It was alarming, ominous. Craig pulled the covers down to his chin and peered at the television across the room. The screen flickered with snow, and the room flashed with its eerie light. Tweak yanked his covers back up over his head. Craig, however, wasn't spooked so easy. Televisions lose reception all the time. They go fuzzy, they turn on and off, they make noise. That's just what happens, and just because it happened in the dark didn't make it any less routine to the braver of the two. Then again, he didn't know what was coming. "Oh, come on, Tweak, it's not that scary," Craig said before getting out of bed. He walked across the room and pushed the power button. The screen went black. All the humming ceased. "See?" Craig announced in triumph. Tweak peeked back out from under his haven of stuffed animals and blankets. With a small smile, Craig made his way back to the bed. He didn't make it back before being startled rigid. The familiar ring of static hummed from behind him. The television yet again flicked back to life. Craig saw the remote undisturbed on a nearby dresser. Still, he wasn't scared. Not like Tweak, who was rattled down to his bones. Craig stomped back to the television and ripped its power cord out of the wall. Tweak settled a little, and Craig sighed in contentment when he made it back to the bed with no more odd occurrences. "See," Craig announced. "Your TV is just busted. Wires are probably loose or something, you know?" Then, cold shivers scraped up both of their spines. Their blood ran cold, breath caught in their throats, and their stomachs tied up in knots. The television was on. Craig shut up straight and stiff. He couldn't believe what he saw. There it was, clear as day. The white glow still filled the room. The screen still flickered in scrambled white and black specks. The cord was still laid unplugged on the floor. Craig could only stare in bewildered fear and fascination. An odd knocking accompanied the screen's undisturbed glow. Craig's eyes shifted to the ceiling, where a door to the attic was nestled above the television. The consistent thumping came from nowhere else. That in itself made Craig's skin crawl. Tweak threw his arm around Craig and dragged him back into bed. "Just ignore it," Tweak whispered with a stutter. "Ignore it and be quiet. It'll leave us alone." Craig, paralyzed in fear, decided to take Tweak's advice. They lay huddled close together. They both tried to steady their breath to keep quiet despite all the noise. It sounded like a single chair dragging across a hardwood floor. Its non-existent legs scraped against a surface that simply wasn't there. In that house, there was only carpet. The static still blared. Knocking still came from the attic door. It grew ever more violent with each bang. Both of their breaths caught in their throats when a crash resonated throughout the room. All the other noise stopped, all except heavy footsteps that creaked the floorboards. "Tweak," Craig choked out in terror. The steps were coming closer. They came from across the room, from the corner which harbored the attic. Tweak clamped his hand over his horrified friend's mouth. If they made so much as a single noise, it would know they were there. The floor groaned louder as the shuffling moved closer to the bed. It stopped at their feet. Something tugged the fabric at their feet, and then slowly pulled it away from them. Their small hands shot up and grabbed the blanket. They tried to fight the specter behind the footboard, but they were no match for its strength. Craig let out a scream of the likes Tweak had never heard when the comforter jerked away from them. The fabric collided with the wall, and then it fell to the floor in a heap. Confused, and with no other direction, they both stared at the blaring television. The picture flickered and swayed with fuzz. The cord still lay unplugged nearby. Craig wanted to scream bloody murder for Tweak's mother to come save them. He could feel someone else in the room as they watched from somewhere in the shadows. What was worse, though, was noticing the attic door gaped open. Their breath was heavy between them. Craig's fingers curled around Tweak's arm like a vice when they both noticed the dark mass lingering beside the television. It was darker than dark, as if it absorbed the blackness around it. Craig let out a strangled whimper of horror. He was too afraid to even scream anymore. Tweak looked at his friend with a similar expression. He could practically see the color dripping off of Craig's once self-assured face. He was paper white, and his mouth gaped open. The boy's wide eyes trained on the entity invading their space, on the ghost. Tweak grew angry. Usually Craig was the all-knowing protector. He never encountered something like this. He wasn't haunted every night for the last 2 weeks like Tweak had been, and he wasn't used to coming face to face with such horrors. Craig was afraid, and the black creature looming in the corner was to blame. Tweak glared into its eyes. They were crimson and glowing like that of a demon. 2 orbs that floated together in a black puddle on the wall. It had never been so violent and angry before, but neither had Tweak. "Go away," he demanded. Craig's stronghold only tightened when he wrapped himself around Tweak's right arm. Tweak could hear his friend's fear in the rapid breath in his ear. The malicious force would not recede. "What do you want with me?" The temperature plummeted. It looked back into Tweak's eyes. Those red orbs felt like a scorching fire that bored holes into his skull. Craig's gasping breath stopped. He saw the attic. It flashed inside Tweak's eyes like an old film. He recognized the bare vaulted ceiling made of 2x4s and open insulation. It was dark, though illuminated like it was caught in the beam of a flashlight. There was no sound or movement. There was one exception. A single rope hung from a rafter. It swung back and forth, back and forth. Tweak's vision flicked like the pattern on the television. It melded in and out as the picture switched from the creature's invasive eyes to the swinging rope. A child's happy face. A woman with kind eyes. The noose. A man smiling in a living room he recognized. The man was wearing the same unsettling grin as he swung. As the noose in the attic caught his fall and his wide bulging eyes remained locked with Tweak's. The toothy grin didn't subside. His eyes didn't break away from Tweak's, even as he was strangling to death, convulsing, swinging. Craig didn't see the happy people, the rope, or the eerily wide grin of the man hanging from it. All he saw was Tweak himself, laying back on the bed with wide eyes and a mouth hanging open like a hatch to a cellar. In tears, Craig shook Tweak. He shook him until their tormentor faded back into the shadows. He shook him and cried until the television flicked off and the bedroom door busted open. Tweak's mother rushed inside, and Tweak blinked. "What's wrong? What's with all the screaming?" she demanded in a panic. She saw Tweak on his back, and Craig cradling him in tears. Horrified, she bolted for the bed and got down beside him. "Tweak, baby, what's wrong?" He strung himself up. She and Craig both exchanged looks of confusion, though Craig's chest was heaving and his eyes were wide with fear. "What?" she asked in a worried tone. He put a rope around his neck. He hung from it in the attic. "That's ridiculous. Who told you such terrible stories?" Tweak still struggled to catch his breath. The image of that disturbing grin lingered in his eyes like a bad taste. That ever-unsettling, toothy grin. It would never fade away. "No one," Tweak confessed as tears spilled down his cheeks. He showed me in my eyes.